to another teacher talks session tonight. And tonight we are going to have another educator from different part of the world. And tonight we are welcoming co-founder of Kinjugo, Lander Hawes. When he comes, we are going to start our live session with him, and we are going to talk lots of things with him. And I'm waiting for him to join the session. Let me invite him for him to join. Hello, Aydan Hocam. It's nice to see you. I've sent the invitation, Lander. You just need to accept it, or you can send me an invitation. I've accepted.
Yeah, wonderful. Hello.
Hey, hi there. Hi,
Hi,
welcome.
Lander. It's it's
Hello.
it's great to see you. I'm fine. Thank you. And it's wonderful to see you, Lander. And before starting the live sessions, and I would like to say thank you very much for accepting my invitation for teacher talks and being with us tonight. It's really great honor to have you here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. Yeah, great.
Wonderful. We have a lot of things to talk tonight, and if you're ready, we can start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Perfect.
let's
So
go.
let's get started. So, and I know about you, but maybe our followers and the listener would like to know about you. So, can you tell us about yourself, please, and a bit about your experiences too?
Yeah, so I've been an English language teacher for about 20 years. Um, I spent probably the first 5 or 6 of those years working in Spain, working in language academies, uh, teaching really everything from sort of first certificate down to young learners. Um, Since 2009, I've been working in higher education in the UK, teaching EAP courses, pre-sessional courses. Uh, and in the last 3 years, uh, I've co-founded a company called Kinjugo, and we have made a game for teaching phrasal verbs. And essentially, we want to really make a lot more games for teaching different English language items.
Uh-huh.
And it's kind of me and one of my best friends from university who's been in the computer games industry for about 20 years as well.
Wow.
And I suppose we think that if you're an English language teacher in a classroom in an English language academy,
Yeah.
there's not too many games out there for you to use with the students. And I've seen sort of English language apps like Duolingo, they're introducing games. I've seen a lot of games used in, say, the primary system and the secondary education system. But we think that the English language sector or the academy sector doesn't have those kind of options. So that's what we're trying to do with Kinjugo.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking to you from my home in North Yorkshire, in the UK. It's just getting dark outside, and so the lighting
Yeah.
isn't great in here, but I
No,
don't
it's
think that matters.
okay. We can see you clearly, and it's also here is 9 p.m. by the way. It's already dark here.
Okay.
It's okay. Thank you. And would you like to add anything else so I can move another question?
No, no, please continue.
All right then. So, what was or were your turning point or points in your own education, Lander?
Well, do you mean as in my life as a teacher, or my sort of my general education?
You can, if you want, you can talk about both.
Well, I think in terms of sort of my teaching life, my life as an English language teacher, I think I'd say that doing the Delta was, very significant for me. And I think, I'd say for the first sort of probably 3 or 4 years that I was teaching, I was kind of following course books. I didn't really have very much professional development. I was teaching a very wide range of courses very intensively. So I quickly learned sort of how to teach the different tenses, how to go about teaching the different language items. I quickly became pretty familiar with, I guess kind of the different exams, IELTS tests, the Cambridge exams, and all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, looking back, I didn't really understand how to teach. And it was one of the things that I learned on the Delta that was really significant was about, I guess, kind of reorienting my teaching to
Mm-hmm.
not so much focus on the activities within the lesson, but more look at the sort of the teaching phases after each activity within the lesson. So I sort of re-engineered my teaching around, I guess, much more embedded kind of teaching after each activity rather than sort of end of lesson kind of plenary teaching phases. And that was kind of one of the points where suddenly, I was like, oh, okay, very different things are happening in the lesson here.
Uh-huh.
I'm kind of getting into a really different place in terms of exploring the kind of problems that learners are having. And, it was a sort of, I suddenly felt that I'd kind of upgraded as a teacher, that I was having a very different classroom experience. And actually around that time, I got much more interested in teaching pronunciation.
Oh.
And my sort of pronunciation kind of journey really began, and that helped as well. So I was learning a lot from Adrian Underhill, and
Wow.
I was sort of really engaging with the sort of the phonetic chart, kind of in its like most pure form.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of, and it just, it just all began to come together, I think, in a very, I suddenly gained a kind of teaching proficiency, which, had taken years to get to, I think.
I understand. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lander, for telling us your turning point here. So, and Lander, I know that you have been teaching for a long time, and during this time, you have tried different strategies and techniques and probably methodologies. And by the way, and also I'm sure that you have kind of a philosophy of teaching. So what is it? What is your philosophy of teaching?
Well, okay, I would say that one of the important themes in my teaching is emotional engagement. And that's something that I've learned over time. And I think one of the situations which English language teachers find themselves in is teaching grammar, kind of sometimes, in my case, quite late at night to very tired students. And the sort of, what I found was that teaching those very dry, quite technical classes is extremely difficult unless there's a lot of emotional engagement in the room. And I was sort of, I got to a point where I was the atmosphere I was trying to create, or the kind of tone of interaction that I was after was almost like kind of friends round a fire. Like, imagine like a music festival, and everyone's talking late at night around a fire.
Yeah.
And people are maybe eating a pizza and kind of relaxing and reflecting on the day and kind of thinking about their lives. And it was, and I found that when I got to that sort of place where I could sort of have people using very complex, you know, say modal past perfect forms, for example, then
Yeah.
the kind of that worked when there was a sort of emotional tone to, you know, to the lesson.
I see.
Engagement was essentially very difficult, and I think, you know, a lot of my kind of discoveries as a teacher have been around, you know, those, you know, not so much, you know, I mean, I referenced earlier sort of acquiring knowledge and acquiring classroom practice, but the sort of, I think that only takes you so far as a teacher, and I think there are times when kind of the only way to engage all the students in the right way is to have them kind of really talking about their own lives and reflecting on their experiences and talking about the things which matter to them and the things which they love.
Yeah.
And then, you know, somehow that shifts the level in the lesson.
I see. I got it. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lander. Would you like to add anything else, or can I move to another question?
No. Please move on. I mean, I
Right
can
then.
talk forever about these things.
No, it's okay. Great. So, you know, as a teacher in our teaching career or the life, sometimes, you know, we have a bad stories and sometimes we have a good stories, and especially definitely we have some success stories in our life as a teacher. So, can you tell us, if you have, of course, one or two success stories of yours, something inspirational?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it was okay. So when I started teaching in higher education in the UK in 2009, it was so around that time British universities began to recruit huge numbers of mainly Chinese students
Oh.
to fund themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the sort of the financial model of universities changed, and, you know, business schools and universities in the UK began to recruit, you know, so literally thousands more students, you know, from one year to the next, so international students.
Yeah.
And the teaching resources which existed then
Mm-hmm.
for academic skills teaching, for essay writing teaching in particular, weren't, I mean, they were very good, but they weren't quite developed enough for the needs of the students. So there was a sort of gap between the level of proficiency the students needed to be at and really what the language teaching published resources could really do.
I see.
And what I found, one of my kind of success stories was really figuring out how to teach students to write university level essays and teach that almost like a card trick, where a student could come to me and and I could really add about 15% to their sort of base level essay writing ability, and I could do that quite quickly. And the first year that I really, and it took me sort of 2 or 3 years of playing around to really get it really good. But by the time I did, I had students who were kind of leaving my class and getting double firsts at the university. really kind of quite smoothly. So there was a
Sure.
sort of, and it was a significant moment in terms of figuring out kind of something important in teaching delivery.
I understand. It's really good. It's a kind of, I'm sure that, the teaching, the writing, especially the academic one, it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's a case where, for IELTS writing task 2,
Yeah.
which is very good for language, but it doesn't really get to the sort of merit level or over 60% structure that's required at university. And actually teaching students, if you like, how to go from level 6 IELTS writing to a merit or distinction university essay is
Exactly.
kind of, a sort of, that's quite a big jump. And it was quite a teaching journey.
And by the way, there is a question from Aydan Hocam. She's asking, students love learning the tips, don't they?
Yeah, I answered actually. I just said yes, they do. Yeah.
You have already given the answer. I see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And by the way, thank you very much for this one. So then I would like to ask you another question, which is related, like with the Kinjugo. You have a kind of software or online platform, if I'm not wrong. So what is this Kinjugo? Can you tell us about it? So what is it, and how did you start it? And so how can the parents or the students can reach it? Where can we get it? So what are the advantages and disadvantages, of course, if you have it? Can you tell
Yeah,
us about
sure.
it?
So Kinjugo is the name of the company. I'll type it in here actually so people can see it. What we've done, we've made a phrasal verbs game called Preposition Safecracker, and you can go to the Kinjugo website. So if you Google search Kinjugo, you can find the usual download buttons there, and have a look at the game. It's based around 450 sentences. They're split across 5 IELTS topics, and they're also divided across 3 ability levels. And within the 3 ability levels, there are 30 grammar points with 10 aligned to each ability level.
I see.
So, and the idea is that the game first is designed for teachers to use in classrooms, right? So it's very much something that's designed to be embedded in a lesson. If there's any teachers listening who want to contact me, I can send them a lesson plan.
Wow.
Which is online on a platform called Amazy. And and in business terms, that game is a minimum viable product. Okay, it's an MVP. So what we're doing at the moment is really trying to get as much response as we can from English language teachers and English language teaching organizations around that game. And if people like it, and if maybe there's some business opportunities there with some language academies, then I can essentially make some more games and begin to sort of create a suite of really high quality English language games that people can use on the mobile phones with students in the classroom.
I understand. It's really nice. By the way, it's related to the phrasal verbs. It's really sometimes, for teachers, it's not easy job to teach the phrasal verbs with the exact meaning to the students. The students sometimes they get confused about, okay, so what I'm gonna use it here? With prepositions I should use it, or with nouns should I use it, or with verbs they come together to use it. So it's not easy.
I mean, phrasal verbs are a huge pain for everybody, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like for teachers, for students, and in fact, you know, one of the things that I notice is so native speakers tend to have a higher usage of phrasal verbs than even very proficient non-native speakers. And I think the reason for it, I mean, okay, just like articles, someone says, absolutely, yeah, is they're extremely difficult to learn, you know, and it's kind of, and that, I mean, also for IELTS speaking, there's a sort of, in level 7, I mean, sorry, the arts teachers would know what I'm talking about, but in the lexical resource category on the IELTS speaking exam test,
Yes.
there is a kind of less than usual vocabulary. There's some phrase that talks about range of vocabulary for an IELTS 7. And when I was teaching IELTS, my assumption was that phrasal verbs were part of that, right? So I would teach phrasal verbs as a way of reaching that level 7. And in fact, there's some academic research out there, which is on our website, which does confirm that, which talks about phrasal verbs as kind of being commonly found in people, in transcripts of people who've got level 7 for IELTS speaking.
I see.
So there is some, you know, in terms of test preparation, phrasal verbs can play, you know, quite a big role there.
Yeah, exactly. They have a really important, you know, the place in that kind of exams, that phrasal verbs, really. Okay, so and I'm sure that the Kinjugo help whoever they need to learn the phrasal verbs with a fun way. I'm sure that's gonna help it.
Yeah, and it's kind of, you know, to my mind, if it's crazy for everyone to have mobile phones in a classroom and to have no way of using them, right? I mean, you know, it's like having a TV in there and never using it. It's just, or having a computer and never using it. I mean, so Kinjugo, one of the objectives is to really, you know, just find a way of using mobile phones in the classroom and in a way that's productive. And it's, you know, and one of the sort of future things or future functions that we can add is where you can have tournaments and competitions with the game.
Yeah.
So
I
it will be
see.
possible to have different classes within an academy competing against each other using the game, which would be really fun.
Yeah, I'm
You
sure.
know, so it's kind of, there's a lot of, I suppose, learning opportunities which these kind of games can provide to a you know, a teaching organization.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And they help also for the, you know, for the teachers. I mean, their jobs become easier to teach it because the students, you know, they can learn better with the games. If you teach them something with the game, they can keep there in my mind, you know, for a long period.
Yeah, I mean, I think that having diverse routes to learning is helpful. You know, there's always going to be some students who are going to find the games more engaging than any other learning route. And I think in language acquisition, the challenge of learning vocabulary is one of the really big problems. And I think that games are one strategy to help solve that problem.
I understand. I see. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lander, for this information about about Kinjugo. So, all right. So let's move to another question. If you don't have anything to tell about it more, would you like that anything else, or can I move another question?
No, please.
Okay.
Yeah, please continue.
I will. So, you know, there are lots of, you know, the trends, and we can see it in education part. So what trends do you see as likely to impact on English language classroom teaching and English language learning? There are to teaching and learning. What is your idea
Well,
about?
yeah, I think for teaching, I think that the the point that I mentioned earlier about sort of emotion, the place of emotion and feeling in the classroom, there seems to be a lot of kind of strength and interest building in that in the sector at the moment. So I think that, in 5 to 10 years, maybe in the next 2 or 3 years, we'll begin to see a situation where, in lesson plans, teachers are expected to state how they're going to add emotional learning and sort of feeling into their class, right? So I think the business or the sector will move to a point where those kind of concerns and those kinds of questions are being sort of formally introduced into into teaching. I mean, in the same way that if you look at learning styles, for example,
Sure.
the idea of auditory learning, visual learning, etc., kinesthetic learning, and our name Kinjugo comes from kin in kinesthetic,
Oh,
plus jugo, which means I play in Latin. So, and certainly in a lot of teaching institutions in the UK, a teacher would be expected to, in a lesson plan, to say how they're going to be responding to the different learning styles, right? What's visual in their classroom? What is auditory? What is kinesthetic? Now,
yes.
and I would imagine that the kind of emotional element is going to start coming into that. And that will be a big new development in English language teaching. I mean, I think in English language learning, really the sort of what's happening in artificial intelligence, what's happening in games and gamification like Kinjugo, I think that's going to play a huge part in English language learning. I mean, I think that what people can do outside of the classroom, the quality of that is going to keep increasing. The variety of that is going to keep increasing. And I think increasingly that English language educators will be people who are kind of knowledgeable about, classroom teaching, but also digital learning, right?
Exactly.
So that's sort of, because artificial intelligence has really, came into the public, say, a year ago, and already there's way too much. Way
Exactly.
too much for,
Totally, I agree with you.
yeah. And it's kind of, so a sort of an expert within the sector, like an English language teacher, is very much someone who can be a guide for a student in how they use artificial intelligence, and how they supplement and reinforce their learning
I see.
just outside of the classroom context.
I got it. I see. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lander, for suggestions. I mean, for your idea about the topic. So let me ask you another question. So probably you have, the training sessions and presentations and etc. So what in this, when you think about them, so what was or were the most interesting situation or situations that you faced?
Sorry, as a language teacher?
Yeah, or I don't know if you give us some courses as a trainer. So if you have any interesting moment.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I've had plenty of interesting moments as an English language teacher. I mean, when I moved to Spain to teach English, I had very little Spanish. I could barely speak Spanish at all. So I was in a classroom situation where, particularly with quite young children, with say 9, 10, 11-year-olds, where I had no Spanish to manage the classroom. So everything was done in English. And so it was a really pure example of English language teaching. And a lot of the Spanish kids thought it was just the funniest thing that they'd ever seen, right? This guy trying to talk to them in English all the time with no Spanish. They just thought it was crazy. And the class became really popular amongst like the 10-year-olds in the city where I was teaching. And all these kids would try to get in there just because there was this guy who just couldn't speak Spanish, and they thought it was really funny. I mean, other moments have included lecturing. I mean, going into giving plagiarism lectures to say 400 international students at once in a university, and and those sort of huge lecture experiences. I think also learning a lot about China. I've spent most of the last kind of 15 years just with Chinese people all the time, right?
Wow.
So I'm really learning sort of lots about, excuse me, pardon me.
Bless you.
So just learning a lot about Chinese culture, sort of trying to, take students from a very different cultural and linguistic and educational background, and having those students, and really guiding them through a year where just everything is so different for them. And sort of,
and probably you have a really difficult times there during that one. I'm sure that it was not an easy situation, especially when
and when, for example, in Chinese high schools, they have vocabulary tests where they have to learn 400 new words every week, right? And they're tested on the 400 words like every day. And so they're coming from that sort of study environment into a British university, which is completely different from that. So yeah, but I think, like a lot of language teachers, the experience of living abroad and working and teaching has been fundamental to it. And the business of, dealing with a lot of people of different levels as well. So going from teaching very proficient business people, scientists, and finding ways of teaching them, and then teaching, say, people at IELTS level 4, who are still moving into a conversational sort of phase of their learning.
I see.
That range of experience is just,
Got it.
It's
Not
a
an
big
easy.
thing.
I see. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lander. Let's move to another question. We know that the technology is really getting bigger, and the changing quite rapidly. We can say that sometimes we cannot catch it, and even we try to catch it, it changes quickly. So, but my question is, how do you stay updated with the latest development and technology in education?
I think it's extremely difficult, and well, I think it's impossible, and I don't, and I think that, you know, I think the idea that really any teacher can kind of stay, you know, stay sort of in line with how technology is developing is extremely difficult. I mean, well, I think it's impossible. I think, you know, I think the role of a teacher is to find, you know, value for the students within that world of technology, and, you know, and bring that to the table for the students. I mean, I think that the way, and I think it's also important that, you know, with the kind of the way that the tech sector develops is kind of in competition with itself,
I see.
right? So when people are creating educational technology, they're often, the conversations that they're having aren't really to do with educators. They're to do with trying to match the pace of other technology firms, right? I mean, for example, you know, with Kinjugo, the technology to make and use the games has
Yes.
been around for sort of 7 or 8 years, right? I mean, the phones have been good enough to do it since about 2014 or 2015, right?
Wow.
But
Hmm.
actually, you know, I've contacted, say, 500 teachers over the last 3 or 4 months. One person has come back to me and said, "Oh, we're using these games already," right? Yeah, and those were just some games on Telegram that were pretty poor quality. Okay, so, you know, it's not as if, you know, the relationship between technology or education technology and education is not a very linked in and kind of strong relationship.
Hmm.
It's kind of, you know, I'm just going to say good idea to this to someone who's posting here.
Yeah. Collaborate
Uh,
with the uni students to catch up.
yeah, I mean, so I mean, I tried to track artificial intelligence and education for about 3 months, from January to March of this year, and by the time I got to March, it was impossible. Right, there was so many different people creating different applications, different, but, you know, the challenge for those companies is to really create conversations with educators,
Yes.
you know, and with language teachers, because unless those conversations exist, then there's no way for those products to find a market, or, you know, to find a home in the sector.
I understand. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lander. Let me move to another question. So it's something related with the students, especially international students. If I'm not wrong, that there are lots of international students in the UK, and every year
Yes, there are.
they move to UK to study or to get educated over there. So, but
Yeah.
what's happening with them in the UK? So, what are the changes? Like, the how is the job market for international students over there? Can you tell us about a little bit?
Yeah, well, things are good for international students here. So about 2 years ago, the government introduced a graduate visa scheme,
Oh,
right? So that's a quite a new development, and that allows an international student to live in the country for 2 years after graduating, and
wow, nice.
keep,
I didn't know that.
yeah,
Hmm.
and keep job hunting. So it's a kind of 2 year window or 2 year period where they don't have to be employed, you know, by a full-time employer, and they can just look for work.
So after they graduating, so they can stay in the UK and they can find a job and work for 2 years.
Sorry, they can spend 2 years looking for work, and then once they find work, they can keep work. There's another visa scheme that comes in once they have a job,
Ah,
and
mm-hmm.
and the employer can get a visa for them. But there's the other point with the UK is that because you have a very strong financial services sector here,
Yeah,
in London and in Manchester and in Leeds, there's employment in those sectors is always strong, right? So students who are coming from, say, business management, any business MSc courses, there's opportunity for them, really.
I understand.
And it's and there's even some recruitment companies now specializing in international students. There's one called International Heroes, for example, which is already doing good things and finding lots of jobs for students. So
For students. Mm-hmm.
there's and a lot of Indian students have come here in the last 18 months, and those students are really, I would say, creating quite a lot of positive change in terms of how international students are seen in the job market. And there are sort of, I think a lot of big British companies are really opening up to the idea of employing international students.
I understand. It's it's a really great opportunity for them, if they can use it, in a good way, so they can do a lot of things there.
Yeah, no, entirely.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for this. By the way, I didn't know that they have a chance to stay 2 years after they're graduating, to looking for a job, and after that, if they find a job in 2 years, they can stay there for more years. It's interesting. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
it's a new thing, and it's it's a very positive development for international students who want to study here and work.
Can in every country, the people apply for that?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
haven't heard otherwise.
I understand. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, thank you very much, Lander. Let's move to another questions. By the way, Lander, you know that you have been working for a long time as a teacher, and maybe right now you have your company Kinjugo, so you are dealing with it. So, but what about 10 years later? How do you see yourself in 10 years? Will you still be doing this job, or will you try another jobs?
Well, well, I'll be certainly working in education. I mean, it would be, the plan is to turn Kinjugo into a real proper business over the next year or so, and really expand and grow Kinjugo, and make a contribution to the English language teaching sector, in that way. I mean, I think that's the plan. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's and at the moment I don't really have many thoughts beyond that. I mean, all of my energy is going into Kinjugo,
I
really, and
understand.
that's what I'm thinking about every day.
So maybe make it bigger and bigger, and putting more different qualifications to Kinjugo, and then it can be a good future plan for them. I hope you will do it. Anyway, all
Thank
right.
you.
Okay, so there are times in our lives that when we are in the bad, how can I say, in a difficult situations, in the hard, the situations when we face it, and we say, oh, I wish I could have that power, I wish I could have that power, so I could do this or I could do that. So when you think about it in the classroom, so if you could actually have one superpower, what would it be, and how would it help you in the classroom?
I
hard
think it would,
question, huh?
yeah, I think it would probably be the power to slow down time. Okay.
Yeah, that's really important. We
Yeah,
need
to
more
slow down
time.
time, maybe for one person, right, in a classroom, and then be able to work on something with them and sort of slow down time. I mean, yeah, I think that would that would be great, you know, because I think there's so many opportunities or moments in teaching when, you know, there's just a little more time needs to be spent with one particular student. Whether that's, you know, in a positive way because they're doing really well and they need something extra, or whether it's more negative where they need, you know, a little extra teaching, and being able to, you know, do that extra teaching in a kind of slowed down moment. But I think, you know, I mean, having said that, I think that sort of in a way that's a kind of, I mean, not literally slowing down time, but I think some of the possibilities with artificial intelligence would
Yeah.
recreate that, where you end up in a situation where sort of any problem that a student is having, as a teacher, you can present them with, you know, an array of digital teaching and artificial intelligence teaching solutions to that
Uh-huh.
to help them solve that problem. And I think, you know, that's why kind of education and learning, you know, people are going to be talking much more about
Yes,
education
definitely.
and learning rather than just education over the next 5 to 10 years, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. I see. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lander. By the way, time, the flies. It's almost coming end of our live session. And now I'm gonna ask you my last question. Are you ready for it?
Excellent.
So here is the last question, Lander. What is your motto?
Oh, my motto. That's a good question. Okay, it's very English. It is
Sure.
keep calm. I'll put in the comment thing too. Keep calm and carry on. That
I
is
see.
the
Wonderful.
that's a
Nice, nice, nice motto. Keep calm and carry on. Nice one. We
yeah.
really need it, keep calm and carry on. Sometimes we really, rush, and sometimes we really, don't want to continue. We want to stop it, but, it's really better. And sometimes to keep staying calm and carry on and continue the things we do.
That's it. No,
I see.
indeed. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, I think a lot of English people, you know, love that motto. It's like a favorite thing for them.
I see. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lander. That's all my questions, Lander. And the before ending our last sessions, would you like to add anything else?
I would just like to say thanks very much, Volkan, for the opportunity to talk, and for the opportunity to appear. I'd also just congratulate you on your fantastic teaching CV, where you seem to
Thank you.
be the most famous teacher in Turkey or something like that. I
Thank
mean,
you. I'm
so,
trying to do
so
my best. Thank you very
yeah,
much.
that's really cool. Um, but yeah, I mean, just and thanks everyone in the audience for listening and for, you know, for being here. I mean, it's 9 o'clock
Hmm.
at night, so
Yeah. It's almost 10 o'clock in Turkey.
it,
It's over
yeah,
there. I
okay,
think it's 8. Is 8 in England or
yeah, something like
9?
that.
Yeah, I
Yes,
see. All
yeah,
right then. Okay. So thank you very much one more time, Lander, for being with us tonight, and especially your suggestions, your advice about many topics. And we also thank you very much for the most important is your time. You spend your time here with us. That was really precious. And Lander Hawes was with us tonight with Teacher Talks, and we had a fruitful session with him. And we are going to be here next week with different educator from different part of the world. And as you know, that every Monday at 9 p.m. And until the next time, take care of yourselves and take care of yourself too, Lander. And we will see each other next week. And Bye bye, everybody,
Good night,
and bye,
Jorge.
Lander, and
Goodbye.
peace. Bye.
Yeah, peace. You take care.
You
Thanks,
too.
sir.